streaming or recording? Just recording. Okay, so it'll go up later onto the web. Kia ora, thank you. So, kia ora koutou. Thanks so much for coming in today. I've got Nikki Snoy. Well, in fact, perhaps I'd ask that you'd like to introduce yourself. That's probably the best way to do things. So this is a sort of ongoing conversation. You were here maybe a couple of months ago, I think it was. So we'll pick up from there. And it's great to see you both. And I'll let you just introduce yourselves. And you've got a presentation, so we'll... Yeah, thank you.
Kia ora, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Nikki Snowink and I'm the Regional Conservation Manager for Forest and Bird. And I've got with me today Ruth Littlewood, and Ruth is the Chair of the Canterbury branch of Forest and Bird. And I think we also have Ines Steger online, and Ines is part of the South Canterbury branch of Forest and Bird. So in Canterbury, Forest and Bird has 3 branches, one based here in Christchurch, branch in Canterbury, and we have one in Ashburton, and that's Edith and Val. Some of you may know them. And we also have a bunch of others down there in Ashburton, and we also have Ines Steger and Joy Sager and a bunch of other wonderful people down in the Timaru, Geraldine area, South Canterbury. So I'm the Regional Manager and I'm the paid staff member for Canterbury and the West Coast. Thank you very much for inviting us back. We can't do bad last time. We're allowed to come back, so thanks heaps. So yeah, I do have a short presentation, and the first slide there, really I've got 5 questions that I have put down there first, and then the 6.6 is a little quick presentation on our nature-based solutions publication, which I myself and Carl, my colleague from Auckland, spoke more in depth to a couple of weeks ago to the Biodiversity Champions group. Some of you have been on. I believe Carl has sent a copy. He sent it to all elected members around the countryside, so this is it here. If you haven't seen it in your inbox, let me know and I'll get briefly to that and how we might use that going ahead. Kia ora, Ines. Nice to see you online. So, yeah.
So I was just wondering, would you like to introduce yourself, Ines, and say a quick hello?
Kia ora. I'm Ines Steger, a Forest and Bird Committee member from the South Canterbury branch, based in Geraldine. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you.
Cool. Am I on? Excellent. So if you don't mind, I've got 5 questions that I'd just love to pose to the council and really just to have a conversation with you to provide us some answers. And the first one is around about the Canterbury Biodiversity Strategy revitalisation. We have been at a number of workshops over the years with that, and my question is, when is this anticipated to be completed?
Kia ora, Nikki, and I can answer that. And there is a paper coming to this month's Strategy and Policy Committee on the biodiversity strategy, and the intention is that it is going to September council meeting, which will be the last council meeting this triennium for ratification. So it's aiming for September of this year. So the paper coming this month to Strategy and Policy is just an update on where we've got to and getting ready for it to be coming through to the council meeting in September.
Yep. Planned for a 3rd workshop of the working group, a workshop on August. Is that correct?
I might have to take your word for that, Grant. I'm not you probably know it better than I. Oh, yes, Jesse's saying yes.
Yeah, we got Motor and Genevieve, you're on that, and Grant now. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Grant. We'll look forward to coming to that next one. And Genevieve, great. Excellent. Now, it's been quite a long process. Great to see it completed and adopted and implemented. Fantastic. The second question is around ECAN funding for regional biodiversity projects, and a number of projects around the region have been generously funded by Environment Canterbury in the past, and I think that some of that funding is coming to an end, and particularly with of the funding came through the zone committee. So our question to you is, what's proposed for the future to enable those projects to keep going and to give them some certainty that the work that has been done in the past can be continued into the future with certainty?
So do we going to pick up on this one as well? Because we.
Do you want to come up to the table, Jude?
Yeah.
Thanks, Jude.
I just while Jude's coming to the table, and perhaps I should explain. Sorry, Nikki, as to why I'm asking these questions. I'm actually currently the acting director of operations, but Stephen Hall has left, and I'm just acting director of operations. So normally I'm the science director, and but there's this operations. So Jude can give a more comprehensive answer. But what I would say is that we have been looking at the way or the kind of guidelines that we use for how we fund these sorts of projects, and it's something that Jude and myself have been involved in looking at, that really trying to go back to the basics of what's the most effective use of the funding for these types of projects. And what that has meant is that there is ongoing funding, and we will be doing that. And well, I'll leave it to you, Jude, to explain more.
Kia ora, thank you so much. There are a number of funding streams that deliver biodiversity outcomes. We have some that are directly targeted as for biodiversity projects. Their priority is to protect what remains as the first instance, and why is this used. That money is same funding amount as last year, so and it might be a bit off here, $1.6 million. And that's spread, and the team last year did a 1 year's funding agreements across a range of projects, while they kind of did a review and a refresh to go, how do we make decisions as in the priority projects, because there's always more projects we could be using than we have money for. And what is the long-term future for funding need for sustain and protecting the investment to date? So there's a bit of strategic work that officers have been doing this past year, and there is and we've made some decisions to fund. I think there's 14 projects. There's about 42 priority sites identified, and the other part of, although they can't all be funded, they will be monitored. So we've got this rationale of how do we prioritise where the money's spent, and that work's underway. And we're also taking the time to go, can we do a bit more assurance for the projects that need multiple years? So, because 1 year's funding is always a bit of a challenge where there's ongoing, and how do we leverage the partnership approach for collaborative delivery on those projects, because they're not solely funded by Environment Canterbury usually. So that's one piece of work for the big bit of work that's mainly for biodiversity outcomes directly, as opposed to a co-benefit type outcome.
I'm just thinking as well, we had a briefing which provided quite a lot of information on this, which I think must have been recorded just maybe a couple of months ago. You pulled together a whole slide pack, and that.
And perhaps I can send that link through. So we did a session, it was live streamed, but it was looking at what is Environment Canterbury's goods and services contribution to biodiversity outcomes on the ground, and how does that reflect across all the areas we do work, where we intentionally focus for biodiversity protection versus where biodiversity benefits may be an outcome, so like in some of our regional park work. And we did a bit of an exercise, and I went through a series of slides trying to capture that amount. It didn't go into the where or the places, but it was trying to highlight that it's not in one spot or one bucket. There's actually it finds itself reflected across the range of services we deliver in our environmental regulation and protection function. But I'll share that link with you, and you can go on YouTube and have a listen.
I've just found when that was, and it was on the 3rd of April this year. And so there'll be a brief on our YouTube channel for the 3rd of April at 10:15, and so that will be what, yeah. But we can share the link to you. But for when this goes out to, if anyone watches this, then they can look on the ECAN website and get to the YouTube part and find it on the 3rd of April. And that was quite a thorough piece of work, which, just correct me if I'm wrong, Judith, but that was to sort of like pull together and look at where things are currently at and how it's done and what's spent, and then that's moving towards affirming whether that's the best way of managing those funds, and then or whether then it might need to be some thinking about doing things a bit differently. What was the process after that?
The intention of that briefing we had was to highlight that biodiversity outcomes are delivered, although the RMA refers to biodiversity as a function of Regional Council, it's an outcome, and it's an outcome delivered through all our work. It's got so many touch points, so it doesn't just sit with our biodiversity and biosecurity team. So that was the purpose, and to try and flesh out some realisation of, I guess, for want of a better term, return on investment, or where that, from a financial investment point of view, where we're seeing that. What that looks like on the ground as far as activity is it didn't go into that. However, one of the evolutions we had in telling our story more comprehensively about how Environment Canterbury contributes to biodiversity outcomes is we do an annual snapshot report. And over the past series of years, we've kind of changed that to tell the comprehensive story better than this is a report of how we spend one bucket of money, which is traditionally how it was reported. We had one funding stream, that $1.6 million for this year I've referred to, and we just used to report on that, which is only a fraction of what we deliver. So in the August, I want to say, Regional Delivery Committee, we will be bringing to Council the snapshot report for biodiversity for the past financial year, which will draw on that presentation I did before and better tell the story across all the streams of functional delivery that touches on. Because it's, it's the tools, it's trying to tell a richness of where our work does deliver those outcomes. So that'll be, I think that date's right, the August the 14th or 13th. Somewhere it'll be in that meeting. So that's another paper coming up.
Cool, thanks, Jude. And presumably there is some documentation from that presentation as well, like a meeting notes or something. It's all there. Yeah, cool, awesome. Look forward to it. We'll have a look at that. Ines, did you have anything you wanted to mention about that regarding your project in South Canterbury? You're on mute. Or have we got no sound? Oh, she spoke before, didn't she?
She is on mute. There's a microphone with a cross.
Yep. No, that's right. Looks like, yeah, stick it in the chat if you have a question that you'd like anybody to answer or Jude to answer. Cool. Awesome. That sounds great. And so presumably you're also collaborating with the TAs around the countryside to look at how the big projects that they are working on can be supported through the collaborative effort. Yeah.
So one of the, I guess, core ethos that we have around by delivering biodiversity outcomes is the role of others in collaborative and partnership delivery. Often because the landowner, to have real sustainable action, you need to be working with those that can have the long enduring measure. And you will be aware that our TAs across Canterbury have different levels of organisation around biodiversity groups, and where there are, I know, for example, in Ashburton, our local biodiversity officer does a lot of work with them. So yes, they do connect with, and same with Waimate as another example. So they are connecting with the TAs and also others who deliver on those outcomes. Yeah.
Yes, I think last time we were here, we talked about the biodiversity strategy and the need to get all the TAs in on to buy into the strategy, because some are not in there. So for it to work, it needs to have everybody on board. And yeah, great, good to hear. Thank you very much for that, Jude and Tim.
Nikki, I was just going to say, you did specifically mention the zone committee money, and just to say that, excuse me, the money that was last year put for action funding, and this very much meets what Jude was just talking about, with the kind of co-benefit of biodiversity, and often they're very closely linked. But that money is still in the budget for this financial year. We're obviously working through the process of what the new form of, I'll just say zone committees, but the new form of local representation around that and how that will be done. But the money is still there in the budget for this year.
Thanks, Tim. And yes, I did mention zone committees because we are interested in the new structure into the future. So can you elaborate on that at all for us at the moment?
So it sits with the Mayoral Forum, and the Mayoral Forum has put through the idea that that it's really up to the local areas to set what form of representation they want on committees that are based around similar principles of the current zone committees. So it's a horses for courses type of approach, and some zones, I mean, for example, Kaikoura have said, they're really happy with it as it currently sits, and they would just sort of resurrect it as it is. And others have said, well, they would actually like to think about it in a different way. But a really strong principle on it is that it is a three-way partnership between Mana Whenua, the local council, and Environment Canterbury with local representation now. And part of that will be around the administration of that funding, but there'll be other things that will be looked at as well by those groups.
Thank you for that. We'll watch this space. Kia ora. All right, so moving on to point 3, and that's great. Thanks for filling us in on point 2. The Christchurch targeted biodiversity rate. That's a really awesome initiative, and I'm so pleased that you got that across the line with the peoples. And I know that the first round of funding has been allocated already. I guess one of the concerns that I'm hearing around the community is, how do we ensure that a good chunk of that money is spent in the Christchurch city area, that it isn't just all funneled out over to Banks Peninsula? And the reason why I say that, like, Banks Peninsula is wonderful. There's really awesome money and effort going on out there, but there's also a lot of need in the city, and the money comes from the city. So what plan is there to ensure that this, or how's this money going to be delivered on projects in the Christchurch city to help biodiversity outcomes?
Yeah, so again, there's pieces of work happening specifically around that. Do you want to talk to that, Jude? Yep.
It's me. I didn't stand down because I knew this one would come back to me anyway. Look, a couple of pieces of work underway. This year we did a year one type approach to go, let's with the council's desire to not delay and have it running, which meant there was a little bit of pragmatism of what we could resource. So as you are aware, we had a contestable project that had a premise around protecting values first. So it's always going to be, in a city environment, protecting high values. It's going to always be a tension there, but that was for the first year. The second tranche of work was around some projects we had that were identified that could be delivered, were ready to go. And so, for example, there was some in the south bank of the Waimakariri, for example, that were more in the, I guess, habitat restoration space than a protect existing values. And then we invested in some foundational, a piece of work around supported QE2. Sorry, not QE2. We supported Covenantine. QE2 was one of the places. And then we had this piece of foundational work done by Marie Long. at the Regional Delivery Committee on the 13th of July, there's quite a B&B theme, so you might like to really join that, because we'll be giving a paper on the essentially that'll run through this is what we did with that fund last year, and it will touch a little bit on the foundational work. The intention is the following day there'll be a briefing around the how does that fund look going forward. Okay, so that's, I guess, right active work right now. So you might want to join in on that. The other item that will be at the Regional Delivery Committee meeting is actually the biosecurity operational plan, which is a requirement we need to do for MPI. So hence the B&B theme for that. So hopefully that's helpful.
I think you mean 13th of August? Yeah. Yeah. We've got several meetings all quite close together. So sorry, Joe.
Yeah, just on that note as well, like, because obviously the targeted rate came through council, and we've raised this as well, raised this very issue. Like, do you see councillor involvement in more of that assessment process?
I think staff are seeing the opportunity to go, hey, look, there's a couple of ways we could do this. What feedback can you give? And that's in that briefing session. Is that, yeah, so we are narrowed down, we see 2 pathways or 3, I don't know, we haven't nailed that yet, but the intention is to get feedback. And as you can imagine, there'll be pros and cons to every approach. Yeah.
And so, Jude, at the 13th of August meeting, will there be the sort of the wrap up or the roundup of Marie Long's work, or has that already happened?
That will be part of the briefing on the 14th, the day after. So it's a briefing which is not in a committee meeting, so a bit less formal, but it'll have, that's where we'll have a bit more of a discussion with council around we see, I don't know, 1 or 2 options. And as you can imagine, the feedback that Marie did when she reached out to talk to a range of people working in the Christchurch district in the space, there were some that never got back to her to engage, which was disappointing. When we ran workshops, there was an absence, and some of the Christchurch city area were absent from that, which was, I went to a part of the workshop. But you've always got that tension between the value of certainty of funding over multiple years versus how do you enable people to access funding to start, so in the future they may have enduring setup to be able to deliver over multiple years. So you're always going to play that tension, and I guess that's why we're taking some time to look what could we do as we work to enable others to deliver and leverage those great outcomes. Yeah.
Another key aspect that I think has certainly been brought into the conversation, and that I've heard from various places, is around the city council also has a role to play within biodiversity, and it's sort of how best can we integrate what we do, what they do, and put the pool of funding from both areas in to get the best outcomes altogether. And that's not as straightforward as it might seem on the surface, but I think that is actually something that's really important to do. And I think there is some I think the city council staff would be interested in trying to work that out as well.
Just for clarity, Christchurch City Council staff were at that workshop to be part of that discussion, and also we as staff are meeting with them again in the interim, to look to see that opportunity.
Yeah. Sorry. You go ahead, Ruth. You go.
When you say Christchurch City Council were at the workshop, which workshop are we referring to? A number. Yeah.
So, sorry, I've forgotten when it was. Probably a month ago, Marie Long, as part of her looking at drawing on insights and thoughts from people already delivering great work for biodiversity outcomes here in the Christchurch district, invited people involved to a workshop. So there was staff, doc, there was a bunch of Ihutai Trust, a bunch of groups invited. Some could make it, some couldn't, etc. But she also rang and interviewed and invited to interview each of those, and had mixed response. So that's what's formed the information. So it's learning on what's the thoughts and reflections from the people who are already doing the work to deliver the outcomes we're after, as to what the opportunity might be. So that's this foundation work that we talked about. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was right up there talking to Marie, so appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much, or to her colleague who came to my office. We had a good yarn for a couple of hours. Couple of things that spring to mind. What was I thinking of just then? Oh yeah. We have to be really careful that in these times when money is scarce, the first thing to go from TAs is the biodiversity funding. So I think we have to make sure that the Christchurch City Council doesn't try and dump their funding in lieu of this funding to make sure they keep it. So we need to urge them to, like you say, Vicky, pull the funds, and then we can do better, do more, do better with more. Yeah, better working together kind of thing. It's a lot of work turning up at all the annual plan submissions to say, don't cut your biodiversity fund, it's really important. So that's what I find myself doing most years. Yeah, so good stuff, really good to hear it. And yeah, look forward to the new structure with the community representation committees. And just another note on, I should say this about Banks Peninsula and why this concerns me, why this concern has come to my attention, is that we have struggled in the past with some enforcement of biodiversity rules over on the Banks Peninsula area, where we've ended up in litigation with City Council over biodiversity removals and vegetation clearance, that sort of thing. So often the folk over there are quite resistant to any sort of RMA type planning issues, but they're all really keen to take the money for their biodiversity projects. It's something that I can't quite reconcile in my head, but it's a thing that makes it has been drawn to my attention and makes me a little concerned, which is why we would like to see a bit of that money kept over here in the city and spent on projects. Oh, the other thing was, we want to avoid a jobs for nature type situation where people have been given money from the government to start really amazing projects and then it's cut off and they're left sort of high and dry to carry on. So enduring funding is really important for important projects so people can keep going with it without falling over. Yeah. That is my main point about that. So thanks.
Sorry, Nikki, just a question to you. Well, I think to you, Judith, you might have an opinion on this as well. Sometimes, there's distinct differences in terms of what the district council, city council, and Environment Canterbury, our roles within biodiversity. There are quite clear. I suspect there's some grey. But there are fairly clear distinctions between which organisation does what in the whole overarching umbrella of biodiversity, biosecurity. Do you think the risk of, say, City Council deciding to pull its funding because, hey, regional council's going to do it and we need to keep our rates low or whatever, do you think if we were more clear-cut in what we do as each council, that you would have a greater ability to hold the funding within each of those organisations? Like, could we work collaboratively and integrate our outcomes, but while holding fairly clear lines, so that you would see if the city council decided they weren't going to fund, you'd see what fell off, rather than it looking like, you can sort of dabbling into space that perhaps isn't so clear cut there. Would that make any difference or not really?
Oh, I think that's a really important point, Vicky, because the TAs do have a responsibility under the RMA to work on biodiversity and protect significant areas, and the Christchurch City Council has a really good significant ecological site list. It's not complete, but that's their function. They have to do that, and then this is sort of additional. The ECAN funding is additional to help expand on that, I suppose, and support that and join it all up and do whatever it can. But I think definitely there's two real clear functions under the Resource Management Act as we know it. Yeah.
I suspect what would be interesting would be, what do the Christchurch City Councillors understand, given that the decision about funding cuts or not is often made from a councillor to councillor, forums. It's not the staff. All staff who are in the biodiversity space will be always championing the money, keep it. But I think and I don't know what opportunity in the next council there might be for that discussion. I think there is. But as I said, staff to staff, we're working. Christchurch City has a biodiversity strategy. It'll be interesting to know how does that align with the Canterbury one, because they'll have slightly different focuses because of their role in biodiversity as well.
I'm just wondering. I'm not sure if government, because there's talk about what's when the new councils come in. What do we do for induction? I'm just wondering whether actually a joint briefing or presentation to the City Council and ECAN Council, as they are after October, outlining very clearly what our different roles are and how important they are, that it's all done, and it's done in a really a consistent long-term way with some certainty. I think maybe that would be something we could put onto the action for that new council coming in. Perhaps Tim, or if governance is in, I think that would be a useful thing. I don't know if any other councillors have got an opinion on that, but that would seem to me like a really good thing to do at the outset and make it clear what biodiversity and biosecurity roles are in the two councils.
Excellent idea. Yeah, you're right. And just the patchy approach around the region, some councils are really good at it. Some have biodiversity officers, some don't. So, yeah, we've got a bit of work to do out there in the region to bring them all up. Yeah, but let's support them. They're doing their best. Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much for that conversation. Appreciate it. On to number 4. It was concerning to read the newspaper article about the $56 million coming to support new water storage schemes in Canterbury. And the question I have is this simply going to drive further intensification in Canterbury? Land use intensification. Do we know? Have we got a plan? Or
I have a crack. Yes, there is a possibility, but the water storage is about sustainability, and having water is the issue. It's not about further development. And I think we go right back to the Selwyn Waihora days when we had those great conversations around CPW and whether we wanted 9 years or 8 years or 7 years of reliability. And if we did this, some viewed that we wouldn't have dairy farms. The critical thing for me is those pastoral farms can find feed and shuffle things around. The critical part is our horticulture, our arable, and those new crops that come along require that availability of water to survive. And so this is about sustainability of water. It's not taking more water. It's really about providing opportunities for diversification. I genuinely see it that way. Yes, there's the view of there's 40 new dairy farms going to be consented, and talking to some of them, they've got a consent and they've parked them because they can't afford to go there in the meantime. I would be concerned if we had a huge influx of dairying. I don't see it happening, but I just see that storage providing that continuity and sustainability, which then gives people opportunity to move. And we need to shift some of our rules so that we actually enable people to pivot out of dairying or wherever we go. We're really, really good at stopping things, but we're not so good at enabling what is the next crop, what is the next opportunity. So that's my answer. Others might have a different view, but that's genuinely how I see it from a rural perspective.
Okay. Yep.
Hey, I think these things are disconnected. I think from the Apua's point of view, and I can speak from Apua's point of view, is essentially there's a couple of things going on there. One is for dam integrity and being able to release water into the river at a faster rate, and it's about trying to get some sort of sense of flood mitigation along the bigger issue. They're fully committed in terms of where their water goes now, and if somebody in that area that's receiving water from the Apua Dam wants to go dairying, they have to jump all the hurdles that are in front of them from our land water plan, our sub-regional plans. I think one of the things that we are pretty keen to look at is how do you integrate some of those structures like Apua for a better subsidiarity, if you like, for communities. I mean, one of the more at-risk communities here are the Temuka, the Pleasant Points, not so much Geraldine from this dam's point of view, but those communities that have been flooded in the past, and being able to attenuate some of the flow of the Opua River when the Opaheason flows, should I say, allows some of that attenuation to extend that period from a 1 in 50 year event, which used to be normal for Canterbury, but we're trying to push that out to 1 in 200 year events now. And we certainly have established that and achieved that across much of Canterbury. South Canterbury at this stage is still pretty vulnerable to 1 in 50 years. And that's a discussion that we're going to have with the wider community. So the problem that they have is if they see a bigger event going, they can't let the water that's there go before they get a bank of water in. So there's a bit of that balance going on. And so I think I don't understand what's going on with Amuri and Waimakere irrigation and why that money is where it is, but essentially in South Canterbury, that's what's going on down there.
Yeah, kia ora, Nikki. First of all, it's not our fund, it's the government's fund. So we're not doing we haven't made a decision about anything. And you also know in the background, we can't do any freshwater planning at the moment because the government's told us we can't. And, that had an impact on our draft RPS that we were doing and our whole planning program around integrated planning coming forward. So that's where that is. And again, that's a government decision that's impacted us. I think what we do have is non-statutory stuff, and we have got a team that's working on looking at that. And I think that's where Forest and Bird and other groups can come into that around how can we work with industry and others to talk about what the future looks like. And I suppose I'm probably more concerned about the resource management reforms and like with just our previous session, the local government reforms, because that will be where the rules may change. At the moment, our plans are what they are, and so there's still the same policies and rules around people facing that if they want to do water storage than has been there for the last 10 or so years. So I think I've got some heart that's there and that'll do a job for all of us. But yeah, I think that we've got those constraints on us around the RM reforms and the most recent, not being able to do any other freshwater planning. So that's where we're at.
May I ask, was there any consultation with Environment Canterbury? No. At all?
Formally, what you're talking about the fund? About the fund? Yeah. No. I have heard ministers talk about it at different local government forums, but no, not directly as far as I'm aware.
Push your button, Dion. Can't hear you.
I just said we found out on the media at the same time everybody else did.
Appreciate that. As always, we are concerned when we see new water storage coming along for the rivers. We have been advocating for good minimum flows in the rivers for a long time and freshwater health and all of that, our view on rivers. So to see more storage come along does raise our concerns quite seriously. Fully understanding the need for resilience, but also fully understanding the need to adapt your farming operation to the needs of climate change in the future. So, that's the other side of that argument. Yep.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just stating as I see it. Yeah. And if we're going to really push denitrification and issues, all forms of farming, and our science tells us what falls out of arable and horticulture, a whole bunch of things. There's this focus on dairy farms, but the focus needs to be on the reduction of nitrate, nitrogen. So it's not necessarily the form of farming, it's the effects that are happening, and that's where the concentration should be. So, yeah, just a comment on the side.
So Genevieve, and then I can see Claire.
No, your questions are good. Thanks, Nikki. Some water storage I think is okay. But yeah, that concerned me when it came out because of the volumes involved. And I guess another thing is the equity of who gets what, and what will the storage be used for. Potential community water supply would be ideal, but there's no suggestion of such, and that is my concern. Is here we go again for me. But yeah, I think everyone knows how I feel about that.
Cool. Thank you. That's right. And then Claire, do you wanna come on?
Yeah, thanks. Vicky, I think just with regards to the Waimakariri Irrigation Company, irrigation reliability from the Waimakariri River is one of the lowest reliable schemes across Canterbury, and it's a relatively small amount of storage that they're looking to put in for roughly 9 days for the whole scheme. So when you actually think about this season, which we've just gone, something like 60 odd days of basically full restrictions for Canterbury. Around 50% of the land use that uses irrigated water out of that scheme is small seeds and arable. And of course, it's very important that they have the ability to secure water at crucial times for those crops to be productive. It's an awful waste if you actually invest fertiliser and your management and everything at the front end and just can't finish it off for the fact that you haven't got some storage or access to water. As far as increasing nutrient loss and pollution, of course, Plan Change 7 was completed a few years ago here for the Waimakariri district, and there is huge expectations on all our landowners to reduce nitrogen loss. So I don't believe you're going to see any intensification, and I think there'll be definitely from the irrigation company and farmers that have their individual land use consents continued intent to reduce their losses of pollution.
Okay, thanks, Claire. Just a comment, I personally visited on Monday a cropping farm that was non-irrigated, that was profitable. This is 16 out of 17 years. The year that wasn't was their own by admission, their fault. They made some mistakes. And that was small seeds and grain and then potatoes on an 8-year rotation. But with a starting to move towards regenerative and real focus on soil health. But yeah, as I say, unirrigated and profitable. So yeah, interesting to hear some of those stories sometimes. So do we want to move on to Plan Change 8? I'm just conscious of the time.
Yep. Can I just say thanks very much, Claire? That's reassuring to know that it's not going to drive more intensification over that side of the Waimakariri. And yeah, important to look at the different types of land use that we can have that don't rely on irrigation in future. So yeah, good to hear that too. Thank you, Vicky. Yep, and so on to number point 5, and that's about Plan Change 8, your proposed Plan Change 8. We haven't heard anything in a while. We provided some feedback right in the beginning, so I was just wondering if you were able to provide us a summary of the feedback and progress on Plan Change 8, where it's at the moment. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Nikki. And I'm pretty much reading verbatim from Andrew Parrish, so which is just that the planning team has discussed the Clause 3 consultation with feedback. The consultation feedback with council, and out of that, no changes were made to Plan Change 8, and we've now gone out for Clause 4A feedback, and that closes today, I believe. The aim is to notify prior to the local body elections, but that is based on the assumption that we get an exception from the minister, because there is this question of, as Craig was alluding to, whether we can do the this or not, and if that's also assuming that we get the feedback from mana whenua, we satisfactorily incorporate that feedback. So aiming for August, maybe September, but August is the current project plan. So in terms of the summary of the feedback, I'm sorry, I'm not quite sure what that means, Jesse, isn't it? Yeah.
Just to jump in, I mean, it's a notification decision, so it also has to assume council will support the notification decision too. So whenever that comes back to council with the full paper, that'll all be public, and then the council has to decide to notify or not. So, yeah, there's no assumption that that's happening. It's just going to be a process that we go through. So, yeah, like Tim said, clause 3, we got some feedback about that, and then that's gone to 4A. We're waiting that, and then that'll come back to us as a paper, either in August or September, depending on how quickly that all happens and when the staff get that pulled together.
So yeah.
Oh, sorry, Craig. I've just pinched your thing. Just, yeah, one thing I do remember was that because you guys, Forest and Bird, you put a question to us about the narrowness of who we went out for as stakeholders for clause 3, and I know that was taken on board, and staff did widen the stakeholder list quite substantially after that. So I have seen the list of who did have clause 3 in the end, who got the opportunity to put in clause 3 feedback to us. So that was appreciated that you did that. There was something a few of us had questioned, and you brought the same. So that was helpful. But we can perhaps get some information back to you. I think that sounds like I'm just not quite. I'm sorry, we were on leave last week, so I don't think quite as up to speed with getting to all the answers today. All good. Apologies.
All good. What is clause 4 feedback? Who was to provide that?
I can't
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. There's a thing called clause 4A. I don't actually know. Sorry, but Jess, do you have a? Just you need a button. Yeah. I'm pretty all over clause 3. I just 4A's like.
Under the RMA, it's the feedback from iwi authorities.
Oh, yeah, cool.
So,
yeah. Okay,
I think normally the process, just to add to that as well, I think when the notification decision comes to council, it'll include the summary of feedback and the process to date. So normally that's part of a paper, as Craig just mentioned. So you'll receive that, but I can work with Andrew to get a summary of the feedback, and that probably would go out to all of the people involved.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great to get any sort of summary or any feedback on that from the initial consultation that we did. We haven't heard a thing. So, yeah, and it doesn't sound like you've heard back from the government on the exemption yet. Yeah, all good. Understand that. Very good. Thank you. All right, on to the final point, and I'll be really quickly here. This is our nature-based solutions publication. It's this little fella here, and it follows on from our Room for Rivers advocacy that we did a few years ago, and we are now tackling nature-based solutions, and it's been led by our my colleague in Auckland because of the Auckland floods and whatnot. They've had he's had really good success up there with Wayne Brown now adopting a policy in the Auckland Council called Making Room for the Water. So good success, I reckon, there. So yeah, it's a great little publication. It's been sent to all of you, and we have done this because there's huge opportunities for nature-based solutions. We need to define what they are, and we've actually used the IUCN definition of nature-based solutions, which is, genuine nature. Sometimes we have to be careful that we don't get confused with a greenwash solution that is not actually genuinely nature. So that's what we're looking at here, shifting to more holistic thinking and creating a whole lot more resilience for the future, and integrating biodiversity into our climate resilience, because it's all everything's connected, as we know, and it really questions how we've done things in the past and whether we should carry on doing that in the future, and are there better ways of doing things. So inside there is heaps of really cool information, and when we presented about a month or so ago to the Biodiversity Champions Group, some of you were there. We had Carl on board with us that day, my colleague from Auckland. Craig, you were there, I know, it was great, and he went into a whole lot more detail, but I had also also done a bit of a scan of how we are using nature-based solutions in Canterbury already, and there's heaps of great work out there that you guys and or your staff and the Mayoral Forum have been working on, and that's a list of it up there. The Canterbury Climate Partnership Plan has Action 4, which is dedicated solely to nature-based solutions, which is great. The Climate Action Plan, that should be the resilience should be action. That's the Environment Canterbury one. Again, B3 is to progress feasibility study of nature-based solutions. We would like to see much more than a feasibility study, just saying. And then also in the 30-year infrastructure plan and the long-term plan, the feasibility is also mentioned there. But you also have the other projects like the Braided River revival plans and the holistic whole of river approach to braided river management, which is very promising. Also refreshing the biodiversity strategy, hopefully it's integrated into that and into the actions and targets for that. And also I've been talking with the biodiversity, the District Council biodiversity people and climate people around the district and saying exactly the same thing, and they also have it. And I also think there's a massive opportunity to promote nature-based solutions through the RMA reform that's coming up, so hopefully the council submissions to that will push that and send a strong signal to the central government that this is what we need in the future. And also some alignment in our plan reviews with nature-based solutions. So some alignment between our statutory stuff and our non-statutory stuff. And I know that we've been banging on about that for quite a long time. So very good opportunity here. So that's it in a nutshell. Hopefully you've all got a copy. If you haven't, I can flick through the link to it so you can have a closer look, and look forward to working with some of the biodiversity staff around the country, the region that are working on this. I know Bex Dollery was the sort of author behind the Mayoral Forum's Climate Partnership Plan Action 4, and she is she made the point about genuine nature-based solutions. What does that look like as opposed to greenwash? So real keen to work with her on that. Kia ora.
Firstly, just to assure you that we have actually had your brochure into all our cubby holes, so we've all got our own copy.
Yeah.
And also just to Skype for the Greater Christchurch Spatial Plan, which has got blue-green infrastructure as the key component, and I believe we're the first sort of spatial plan that has really embedded that in as a real key aspect. So that is coming. I saw John wanted to speak. I'll let John first, and then Grant's got something to say.
Thanks. And I'll say I haven't read it. It's great. We've got the list of all these plans up there, and plans like rules don't achieve a damn thing. And it's actually happening on the ground. So my question is, how well integrated is your thinking in connection with our catchment groups and collectives where that stuff is happening on the ground? And for me, that's where it needs to really, yes, we can have our biodiversity officers in here and TAs and whatever, but how connected or how well connected are you into those catchment collectives and groups where those activities are happening, all that non-statutory stuff?
Probably not as well connected as we could, John, but sometimes those groups are set up for slightly different purposes, but Forest and Bird also has its network out there in the community, and some are connected with them. Yeah, definitely.
It's just where I see on the ground within those catchments how it happens, how it's integrated, and it's one thing for us to talk about it and set plans and talk about how wonderful they are, but it's generally getting on the ground and doing it is the piece. Yep.
Yeah, Nikki, I want to commend Forest and Bird for putting out those little brochures because they're really important. They provide a visual clue for people. You can say, allow for widening the river, and then people think, oh, okay. But I really like in your latest document, where you show a picture of a few red lines weaving through the side of an urban environment or whatever. We're slightly behind the times in terms of how we treat urban stormwater discharge. Overseas for a number of years now, many years, they've been taking out the old concrete block channels or concrete channels that went through cities, widening them out. They are parks when there is no heavy rainfalls, but when there is, there's capacity to take it out, and then the ground recovers and things. So that's really useful to have that. So I think keep doing that, because the public and decision makers have some visual clues, really, and I think that's the important thing about this. Just a question I have. Presumably you have commented on the Department of Conservation's recent publications looking for submissions on the 2050 Predator-Free New Zealand. And the other thing, because we're providing some submissions on those as well, and the other thing was their implementation plan. I think it was for 2050 implementation plan going forward, or 2035 maybe. So you're doing that?
100%. Yep, we put in feedback on the Predator Free 2050 next 5-year plan. That was we did that and totally encouraged them to broaden the scope of Predator Free 2050 to add in those other species that we are all trapping out there at the moment, like the hedgehogs and the feral cats. The mice are a bit more of a slippery character, but why not include them right now and be really ambitious? And also the biodiversity strategy implementation plan, we've put feedback in on that as well to encourage and empower the Department of Conservation, encourage them to carry on with that. And again, it's all linked to the stuff that I'm talking about, nature-based solutions through that as well. The biodiversity strategy has in itself like 2025 targets, 2030 targets and 2050 targets. So I'm really concerned that the Department of Conservation is off track on its 2025 targets and is just kind of like putting them aside. So I'm trying to get them to tell us what progress has been made to those targets, like what did we miss and then why did we miss that, and how can we reset it so that we can get it back on track again. And the one that I am most concerned about is ungulates and wild animals, and how we're not making any progress towards dealing with feral pigs and deer and goats that are absolutely hammering our native ecosystems out there at the moment. So there's no plan for that. In fact, the plan for that is counter to dealing with that plan at the moment, and it's to protect the damn things in national parks. So, yeah, very, very disappointed in the department over that.
Well, just supplementary. One thing that I picked up on that on their approach is the feeling that funding isn't there, and there were remarks within the document about people joining together a bit more. I think Jude talked about a partnership approach. Is that your view that the way forward is, and even with what John's talking to, is for us to gather the partnership and get everybody coming on board and doing their little bit, that cumulatively together we're actually making an advance and not solely relying on some limited resourcing issues with Department of Conservation.
Yeah, 100% Grant. And there's examples of that happening already with the wallaby eradication program and the wild and conifer program, where the groups, all the agencies and the community groups are coming together to try and deal with them. So those are two really good models that, if they are refined a little bit, they could work really well. And if the funding is there to actually deal with the issue. So, yeah, those are good models, and it takes everybody to work together. And, yeah, we strongly encourage the department to work like that and not just try and work on its own, because it's a neighbour as well.
Okay, and I've got Craig. Tim, did you need to get going? Because I realise we're 5 minutes over now. We did start a little late, but okay, we'll do another 5 minutes.
Yeah, just want to say thanks, Nikki and the team, for presenting that to the Biodiversity Champions meeting. It was really good. So people just remember that's our little forum we have with all the district council, both councillors, elected members and staff that work in that space. It was a really good presentation, and I know that there is real examples on there on the ground, so thank you for bringing that to us. And I just wanted to note that we do have a program here in our Rivers team around coastal inundation and looking at nature-based solutions. I think some funding from MFE. So that is going on. So you might want to connect your team with our team there. I think it's Chris and the Rivers team would be the one to contact. So just putting that out there. And I think John's point about connecting to catchment collectors is probably a good idea, actually. So I just would commend that again. Get this information to as many as possible, and let's see if we can all make a difference. So thank you again, Kia ora.
Thanks, Craig. I appreciate that. And yeah, connecting up totally. Cool.
Great.
That's it.
I think that's a wrap. So yeah, thank you so much for coming in. It's always a pleasure to have you come in. All the work you do, and I know it is really important. I think there's a growing recognition of the importance of collaborating and working together and hearing from people on the ground, which and you do a great job of bringing that to us. So thank you. So I think we better. Got Jan. You'd like to? No.
Kia ora tātou, o nei ana te mihi kia koutou hara mai tēnei rā, he rawe te whakarongo, te tūhonohono hoki, no reire kia koe niki, tēnā koe, tēnā koutou, nā reire ka whakakapi te hui nei, tēnei rā, ka tāko nei te karakia unuhia. Unuhia, ki turu tapu nui a tāne, kia wāti, kia maama te kākau, te tinana, te wairua, jarataka tū, koia rā, e roko, whakairi ake, e kiruka, kia tīna, haumi e hui e, tāe ki e. Kia ora tātou.